Okay, so music lovers and tech wizards. Get ready for a deep dive into a career that blends artistry and circuitry,
Hmm.
electronic musical instrument making. Forget mass production. We're talking custom builds, cutting edge tech, crafting the tools that shape sound
Yeah,
itself.
it's a field where you're not just building instruments, you're building the future of music.
I like that. And our guide for this sonic journey, it's RoleCatcher, the career platform. They've given us an exclusive backstage pass into this world. They've got the specs on everything from the work environment to the skills you'll need to hit the high notes in this career.
It's a niche field, but it's definitely one with a growing demand for skilled craftspeople who can blend technical expertise with a passion for music.
That's awesome. So
We're
let's start by setting the scene. What's the typical workshop look like for these sonic architects?
Think well-lit, ventilated workspaces. That wouldn't look out of place in a high-tech lab, or maybe even a musician's garage. You've got soldering irons standing ready, wires and circuits laid out like musical notes, and components in all shapes and sizes, just waiting to be assembled into something extraordinary.
Sounds like my kind of jam session. But RoleCatcher also mentions that safety is paramount in this line of work.
Absolutely. Just like a musician protects their hearing, instrument makers need to be mindful of potential hazards. We're talking proper ventilation to handle fumes from soldering, safety gear to protect against electrical components, and careful handling procedures for chemicals. It's all about staying safe while you're shaping sound.
Right. Because the last thing you want is for your creative spark to be extinguished by a preventable accident. Speaking of shaping sound, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What do electronic musical instrument makers actually do all day?
It's a dynamic blend of technical prowess and artistic finesse. Imagine a luthier, a skilled craftsperson who builds and repairs stringed instruments. But instead of wood and strings, you're working with circuits, wires, and electronic components. You're assembling intricate parts, soldering delicate connections, and meticulously testing every element to ensure it's producing the desired sound.
Wow. It's like being a tech-savvy composer, translating musical ideas into tangible instruments. RoleCatcher provides a whole list of action verbs that really capture the hands-on nature of the work. Assembling, wiring, soldering, testing. It's not a job for the faint of heart or the unsteady of hand.
It requires a high level of precision and an almost obsessive attention to detail. Remember, you're not just putting together a circuit board, you're crafting the very tools that musicians will use to express themselves.
And that brings us to the industry itself. RoleCatcher predicts a 2% growth rate for electronic musical instrument makers over the next decade. Now, 2% might not sound like a chart topper, but in the world of employment statistics, it's actually a pretty solid tune.
It signifies a healthy and growing field, especially when you consider that many skilled trades are facing shrinking workforces. This growth is being driven by a few key factors. First, there's an increasing demand for unique, custom-built instruments, as musicians strive to create their own signature sound. Second, the technology in this field is constantly evolving, leading to new types of instruments and more sophisticated designs. Think about it. We've come a long way from the simple synthesizers of the past.
Right. It's like the difference between a vintage record player and a state-of-the-art digital audio workstation. The possibilities are constantly expanding.
Exactly. And that brings us to the third factor driving growth, the rise of CAD software, robotics, and new materials. These advancements are revolutionizing the way instruments are designed and manufactured, creating exciting opportunities for those with the right skills. This isn't your grandpa's piano factory.
So it's a field with staying power, a career that's both creatively fulfilling and future-proof. But let's be real. Every gig has its pros and cons. RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from that, highlighting both the high notes and the challenges of this career path. They really do. On the one hand, you get to make a unique impact on the music world. Imagine an artist pouring their heart out on an instrument you built.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's no denying that competition in this field is fierce.
Yeah, and that's where the real magic happens. That high competition pushes instrument makers to constantly innovate and hone their skills. It's not a field where you can just rest on your laurels. You need to stay ahead of the curve, whether it's by mastering new technology, finding your niche in a specific instrument type, or becoming the go-to expert for a particular genre of music.
Yeah. Speaking of finding your niche, RoleCatcher briefly mentions the possibility of specialization, and it really makes you wonder about the possibilities.
It's an area ripe for exploration, imagine. You could focus on building experimental electronic instruments that push the boundaries of sound design. Or you could become a sought-after specialist in restoring vintage synthesizers. bringing those classic sounds back to life.
Oh, wow. Or how about this? You could become known for crafting custom instruments tailored to a specific genre, like building the ultimate dubstep bass synth or the most ethereal ambient soundscapes. Talk about leaving your mark on the music world.
The possibilities are truly endless.
Oh,
But no matter your specialization, there are some core skills and knowledge areas that every aspiring instrument maker needs to master.
okay. And that's where RoleCatcher really dives into the details. They've got a whole section on functions and core abilities. That reads like a blueprint for success in this field. And let me tell you, it's not as simple as just plugging a few wires together. This is high-level craftsmanship meets electrical engineering.
Right. You've got to be able to decipher complex blueprints, assemble intricate circuits with precision, and master the art of soldering, fusing metal with heat to create those all-important electrical connections. And don't forget about troubleshooting. When things go wrong, which they inevitably do, you need to be able to diagnose and fix problems with the skill of an electronic detective.
That's a good way to put it. So you're not just a builder, you're an inventor, a repair technician, and a bit of a musical magician.
Hmm.
And RoleCatcher doesn't let you forget that continuous learning is key in this field. They have a whole section dedicated to knowledge and learning, emphasizing that the journey of an instrument maker is never truly over.
Yeah, that's what makes this field so captivating. It's constantly evolving, with new technologies, materials, and techniques emerging all the time. The most successful instrument makers are those who are driven by an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. They're always tinkering, experimenting, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Wow, that's amazing. So, if you're thinking about diving into this world, get ready to embrace lifelong learning. RoleCatcher lays out a clear career progression, starting with an apprenticeship where you'll learn the ropes from seasoned pros. From there, you can climb the ladder, gaining experience, and eventually becoming a fully fledged electronic musical instrument maker.
It's a journey that takes dedication and a willingness to put in the hours. Imagine starting as an apprentice, your hands covered in solder and your mind buzzing with new information. And then, years later, reaching the pinnacle of your career, designing your own groundbreaking instruments, mentoring the next generation of makers, or maybe even starting your own custom instrument company.
Wow, that's the beauty of a career path like this. It's not just a job, it's an ever-evolving passion that can take you in countless directions. But let's get practical for a moment for our listeners who are totally amped about this career path. What does RoleCatcher recommend for getting started?
Hands-on experience is key. Think about it. You wouldn't expect to become a master chef just by reading cookbooks. You need to get in the kitchen, experiment with ingredients, and develop your own culinary style. The same principle applies to instrument making.
Okay, so are we talking about setting up a makeshift workshop in our basement and ordering a soldering iron online?
It's not a bad place to start. Building instruments as a hobby, even if it's just simple circuits at first, is an invaluable way to gain experience and develop a feel for the craft. And don't underestimate the power of volunteering or interning. Reaching out to local music studios, repair shops, or even instrument manufacturers can open doors to mentorship opportunities and real-world experience.
That's a really good point. And speaking of opening doors, RoleCatcher also emphasizes the importance of networking. It's not enough to be a sonic genius in your own right. You need to connect with other like-minded individuals, share your passion, and learn from the best in the business.
This field thrives on collaboration. There are countless online forums, workshops, and meetups where you can connect with fellow makers, get feedback on your projects, and stay updated on the latest industry trends. It's a supportive community that's always willing to welcome new members who share the same love for music and electronics.
It sounds like a cross between a band practice and a tech conference. Sign me up. But what about the formal education route? Does RoleCatcher recommend any specific degrees or certifications for aspiring instrument makers?
Interestingly, while a high school diploma or equivalent is generally preferred, they don't place a heavy emphasis on formal education as a must-have. Instead, they highlight the value of vocational training or specialized courses in electronics, musical instrument making, or related fields.
Okay, so it's more about passion and experience than having a fancy degree.
To an extent, yes, of course. A strong foundation in electronics and engineering is essential. But hands-on experience and a genuine passion for the craft are highly valued in this industry. Think about it. You can learn a lot from textbooks. But nothing beats the thrill of building an instrument with your own two hands and hearing it come to life.
Right. There's something so satisfying about taking raw materials and transforming them into something that can create art, evoke emotions, and inspire countless listeners. But speaking of inspiring listeners, RoleCatcher does something really interesting in their description of this career path. They offer a bunch of alternative titles for the role, basically. Other ways to describe what these sonic wizards do.
Mm.
It's a testament to the multifaceted nature of this career. Some of them are pretty straightforward, like assemble musical instrument parts, but others are a bit more evocative.
Yeah, exactly. Repair musical instruments, for example, really stood out to me. It suggests that these makers aren't just creating new instruments, they're also the ones who keep those beloved tools of musical expression alive and kicking. It's a crucial aspect of the job. Vintage synths, classic guitars, even custom-built instruments that have seen better days. These are often treasured possessions. And their owners want someone with the expertise and passion to restore them to their former glory.
It's like being a musical instrument surgeon, carefully diagnosing problems, replacing faulty components, and bringing those sonic masterpieces back to life. So, we've talked about the work environment, the day-to-day tasks, the industry outlook, and even how to break into this electrifying career.
We've also touched upon the importance of continuous learning, the power of networking within a passionate community, and the surprising blend of technical expertise and artistic sensibility that this field demands.
Right, but there's one crucial aspect we haven't fully explored yet: the core knowledge and specific skills that make an electronic musical instrument maker truly exceptional.
And that's where RoleCatcher really shines a light on the depth and breadth of this career path. They've broken down the essential knowledge areas into 6 key categories, each more fascinating than the last.
Wow. And believe me, they don't skimp on the details. Get ready to have your minds blown. As we delve into the intricate world of sound engineering, quality control, and the surprising role that fine arts knowledge plays in this tech-driven field.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're looking at these 6 categories. And wow, quality control analysis is at the top, like 50% importance rating.
right. Makes
Wow.
sense when you think about it. I
Yeah.
mean, you can be amazing with circuitry, a total soldering pro, but
Hmm.
if the instrument doesn't really work right, none of that matters.
Right.
Quality control, it's everything, making sure each note, every single note rings true, every knob, smooth, connections are solid.
So it's detail-oriented, but like also a musician's ear for the sound quality. And speaking of musicians, I noticed customer and personal service, and even fine arts knowledge, ranked highly.
Yeah,
61%, 54%. That surprised me.
it makes sense because it's really personal work, building a product.
Yeah.
But you're working with artists
Yeah.
to bring their sound, their vision to life.
Right.
So you need communication skills, you have
Yeah.
to have empathy for their creative process,
Right.
and then translate that into like technical stuff.
It's like you're fluent in both languages, electronics and music.
Exactly.
That's cool. Oh, and mechanical knowledge, too. 61%, because it's not all circuits, right?
No, you've got the keys, valves, pedals, strings,
Mhm.
all working together.
Wow, so we've got electrical engineering, mechanical, and artistry.
It's a lot.
Now, RoleCatcher also had these adjacent career guides, things like membranophone musical instrument maker, keyboard, idiophone. Sounds like a lot of instruments.
There's a huge variety out there.
Yeah.
We're focused on electronic today. But acoustic instruments, they have their own whole thing going on.
So we've explored this world of circuits and soldering, but it seems like if you love sound and making things, there are many paths.
Definitely.
Maybe someday we'll be back to deep dive into like hand building a violin
That would be fun.
or restoring a pipe organ, something like that.
The possibilities are endless, like music itself.
I like that. Well, on that note, everyone listening, this has been our deep dive into being an electronic musical instrument maker.
We've covered so much.
We talked about the actual work, the skills,
The career paths, how to start out,
and how important it is to never stop learning.
that community aspect too.
Right, finding those people who get it. But as we unplug here, one last thing to think about. Technology keeps changing so fast. What about AI? Robotics? How will that change instrument making?
It's a big question. Will it be this explosion of new sounds, instruments we can't even imagine now, or will it change? That human touch that makes each instrument special.
It really makes you think. That's all the time we have, but thank you for joining us for this deep dive into electronic musical instrument making. Keep those sonic dreams alive, everyone. And remember, the most amazing instruments, they come from passion, skill,
Absolutely.
never giving up on innovation. See you next time.